We are back live broadcasting yet again from the top of stately Torch Tower. As you can hear, maybe you can't hear, but a very heavy rainstorm passing by. So if you hear any of that in the background, no, that is not a woodpecker tapping away at the window. That is a rainstorm. Yes, it's coming down quite heavy here in the northern New England area. I should say the northern Massachusetts area. But we are here once again live on the only way to spend your Saturday here with us on Johnnie Torch Live, where we bring you only the finest stories, only the finest news stories that I carefully culled all afternoon to give you a inside look, a rear glimpse at the current state of the comic book and pop culture genre. So how have you been? Let me know. I think we have the chat open here if I can find what I did with it. It's over here in case anybody wants to chat. As I said before, though, that kind of throws me off when I have to chat when I'm doing the show. But I make every endeavor to interact with the viewers. So if you do indeed want to discuss some of these things, we will talk about it live on the air. All right, so a lot of stuff to get to today. A lot of varied subjects, not a whole lot of, detailed subjects. We got two big subjects that are in the topic, in the title header there that we'll talk about later. But right now, let's start with this. We've got I don't know if it's considered a trailer, but there's a bunch of sort of short mini promos or whatever of Iron Fist 2 that have come out. I've watched a couple of them. This one got me excited because I really like Davos as a villain. I thought he was really cool in Iron Fist, the original season. The problem is, though, I don't know. I don't know why they seem to be so adamant about not giving costumes and the like, but they are giving him the power here of the Iron Fist. He gets an Iron Fist power here as well. His hand gets to glow and light up here. And apparently the name of the character that he's portraying, the villain that Davos is to become, is the Steel Serpent. Again, I don't know a whole lot about Iron Fist from the comics. I've got a handful of Heroes for Hire comics from, I guess it was the late 70s. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at them in a while. But a handful of comics. I'm not familiar with this character, but he's apparently Iron Fist's main adversary, as he has the same powers. And I liked the character, like I said, in the original season. The sort of, broken friendship that they had there, the broken relationship that, I've said this many times, but it seemed like something that Baron Mordo and Doctor Strange should have had. They captured it so perfectly with Davos. And I'm actually looking forward to Iron Fist more than any of the other shows that are on Netflix. I liked it that much. As I said before, the first season, the first few episodes of that season were woefully bad. We had Homeless Danny and then Mental Patient Danny, and it was basically them trying to pad a unreasonably long season with 3 or 4 episodes they could have axed. But in the overall picture, I think Iron Fist was probably the most successful. I don't think it lagged in the middle. I don't think it overplayed the violence and gore. I think most of the other shows can be said to have done that. Although, I don't know. I don't know if Luke Cage was quite as violent, but, well, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Are you excited about Iron Fist Season 2? Am I the only one that liked the first season and has any hope for the second season? Of course, Iron Fist Season 2 will debut September 7th on Netflix. So there we go. A couple of quick stories here we've got. Because we already did we usually do only one Torch News Roundup a week because there's not usually enough material to go around, but I found a couple of brief topics we can talk about. This will sort of pad the episode, I guess, if you will. The DC Universe's Swamp Thing will find a production designer and start shooting on September 10th. So as far as I know, we haven't heard any casting. This, of course, is the late, great Dick Durock, who played the original Swamp Thing. And he also played the villain in the Incredible Hulk TV show. He was the evil Hulk or the bad Hulk. I don't know how they described him, but yeah, he was famous for playing Swamp Thing, not only in the films, but in the original TV series. I still say I'd like to check out some of those TV episodes. I think they have them on a local cable channel around here, but I never set my DVR to it. I always forget. But when I was a kid, I remember glimpsing a few episodes, and it seemed like the kind of 90s superhero TV fare that you would expect. But are you interested in the upcoming reboot series, which of course will be, I'm sure, much darker, much more probably cynical, much more violent? You know, that's how things roll these days, I suppose. All right, but you can always let me know in the comments below if you have any enthusiasm over the Swamp Thing DC Universe upcoming series. All right, here's some more casting news we have. Deadline reports that 25-year-old Canadian actress Keena Mandira, I think that's how you pronounce her name, especially her first name I'm not sure about. Keena Mandira from Taken and Dark Matter will play a gender swap. Oh, they have to be gender swapped, of course, don't you know? You know, we can't keep all the villains accurate from what they originally were in the comics. She'll play a gender-swapped incarnation of the villainous Spin. Now, this is confusing because wasn't there a gender-swapped Top in the, what was it, second season? Or maybe the third season, I can't remember. Mirror Masters, Main Squeeze. Yeah, that was interesting. They already had a character that was sort of like that, and they gender-swapped her, and they never brought her back. Or did they bring her back for one episode? I don't know. The sad thing about the Flash TV series is they have woefully underused the Rogues Gallery, the classic Rogues. Think about it. Captain Cold, of course, really made an imprint with Wentworth Miller. And sadly, he didn't last for very long. He moved over to Legends, and then they basically moved him on out. I think he's done with the Arrowverse now. Then we had Heatwave, who, of course, was turned into a, you know, lovable anti-hero on Legends. Who else really got their due? We got Grodd. I don't know if he was really considered one of the rogues, but we got Gorilla Grodd, who makes an appearance from time to time in different, you know, shows, either in Flash or in Legends. Again, they really didn't clamp him down. He should be a season-long villain. But beyond that, Mirror Master was completely underutilized. The Top, underutilized. I think Turtle Man was a classic rogue back in the day. Again, he had one episode and they wrote him out. Although, of course, Turtle Man isn't exactly one. You know, he's the equivalent of Stilt Man. Stilt Man is the Daredevil villain that everybody sort of mocks as the probably worst concept for a villain. All right, so let's read some of this description here. In the comics, Spin was a metahuman with the power to manipulate emotions. Well, then I guess that means she's not going to have spin powers. I don't know. Which he used to amp up the public's anxiety and spin it into what he wanted. Sort of like a scarecrow, I guess, is what they're trying to say. Though this small screen take may eventually go down that road, she'll be introduced as a young, aspiring social media influencer who seizes the opportunity to make herself famous when she discovers there is a new hero in Central City. All right, so this sounds dangerously like another SJW topic here, where we're going to have social media influencers influencing things and putting the spin, the political spin on things. That ain't exactly what I was hoping it would be, but I don't know. Again, let me know what you think. Oh, I don't have it written in my notes, but let's take a look. I have the image, I think, of the new costume. And there was some controversy about this online in social media, and there was apparently some body shaming going on with Grant Gustin, and I didn't really look into any of it, but apparently people were complaining about his size, that he was thin. He's always been thin, and I guess they think he's too thin to play the Flash, which is kind of odd because he hasn't gotten any thinner than his normal weight is. I mean, it's not like it's he doesn't look visibly any different in this costume either. And he fired back on Twitter saying, basically body shaming is wrong and it happens to both men and women, even though apparently it only gets reported widespread if it's women. And he took to defending the suit, which he said looks better in live action. He even took a picture of it, which I couldn't put on because for some reason, when you have a picture embedded in Twitter, you can't just grab the picture and put it online. Otherwise, you get the whole page. But the costume itself, to me, looks fine. The thing I don't like is the helmet. The helmet for the Flash costume for Grant Gustin has always looked a little dorky. I must be completely frank with you. I always thought it was slightly dorky looking, and they could have done something about it. But it seems to me that it looks even bigger, and I don't know why. To me, the Flash's headpiece always seemed to me to be very tight to the head. But they kind of sculpted it to look like a helmet. Like if he runs into a wall or something, it would protect his cranium. But I don't know. Something about that I always felt it was a strange shape. But again, nothing terrible. I mean, I don't particularly know why anybody would mock this costume or anything. I'm not thrilled with the way it looks. But then again, you see, I was raised on the John Wesley Ship Flash costume. Now, there was a costume for you. There was a costume. I don't have it here to just pull up quickly, but I think everybody knows the original 90s Flash and the John Wesley ship suit. It was, foam rubbered, and it was made to look very muscular in keeping with the 90s. But it looked basically like it came off the page, and it also looked like it was imposing. It was something to be feared. If you ran into the Flash in a darkened alley, you see this Crimson Defender, and, he's big as life and stuff. It really did have impact that I don't think the Flash suit has nowadays. But again, this has nothing to do with Grant Gustin. This image here, this actually looks to me like Nicholas Hammond. Doesn't it look like Nicholas Hammond? Again, for those of you who don't know, that was the original Spider-Man actor from the 70s. This doesn't look like Grant to me. This looks like Nicholas Hammond in the Flash costume. But let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think about the Flash costume? What do you think about this casting for the Spin, or just Spin? I don't know how she bills herself. All right. We are continuing to cover the Sonic the Hedgehog film. I don't know if this interests you or not. If not, I guess if you're listening to this on the replay, flash forward by about, 3 minutes. Is that what it takes to read this article? I don't know. But some more casting has been done. We have Ben Schwartz playing Sonic the Hedgehog, the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, this upsets me. This very much upsets me because I would love to see Jolly White return to the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog. He is by far the most familiar voice of Sonic the Hedgehog. He did the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog in the original Sonic cartoon with Princess Sally, and I don't know what that show was actually called beyond Sonic the Hedgehog. He also played the voice in the Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon with Scratch and Grounder. Again, I think that was just called Sonic the Hedgehog as well. He also portrayed the voice of Sonic in Sonic Underground. So he had been doing the voice of Sonic pretty much directly after he left the role of Urkel. And from then to, I don't know, I want to say maybe 2006, 7, something like that. So a good 15 years probably of him playing Sonic the Hedgehog's voice. I don't know who Ben Schwartz is. The part of the article is cut off that but apparently he's going to play the voice of Sonic, and I can just imagine by looking at the guy that he's not going to sound anything like Jolly White. So this is disappointing to me. Once again, taking a role away from a black actor, I'm honestly ashamed. I'm ashamed to be a white male in this society where we take roles away from black actors. Of course, this is kind of what's been happening all along. This is what's been happening with everybody's complaining about the race-changing characters. I don't know. Maybe this is just a bizarre, out-of-step turn that they weren't going to cast a black actor to play Sonic. But personally, I would have loved to have seen Jolly White return. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you going to miss Urkel as the voice of Sonic? Also, 2 more. Stars have been added with Adam Pally and Neil McDonough, which, of course, Neil McDonough, everyone will remember from Damien Dark and Dum Dum Dugan. He's pretty familiar. I don't know the other guy. It says here Adam Pally was in Iron Man 3. I don't remember that. Let's see. It says James Marsden has been cast as the human lead, a small-town cop that finds himself on the road trip of a lifetime with the speedster Hedgehog as they race to San Francisco. Pally will play a police officer that works alongside Marsden's character, while details on McDonough's character is being kept under wraps. Tika Sumpter will play the female protagonist, while two-time Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey will star as the evil Dr. Robotnik. I don't know. I don't know how much this is true. Let's see. Jeff Fowler is directing with a screenplay from Patrick Casey and Josh Miller. Neil H. Morris is producing, while Tim Miller is on board as executive producer. Sonic the Hedgehog is expected to hit their theaters November 15th, 2019. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you like this idea of Ben Schwartz? Do you like the idea of Neil McDonough joining the cast? Apparently, I guess Jim Carrey is going to be Robotnik in this, although there's been various accounts. Some are calling him Robotnik. Some of them are calling him Eggman. I don't really know how they're going to slice this. They're going to go by the American, the American version of the character, which was always known as Robotnik, or they're going to go by Dr. Eggman, which I guess was the original Sega character. But either way, let me know in the comments below. Do you want to see Jahali White return? Start getting those petitions made up, and I will sign on the dotted line. Okay. Next up here, what do we got? Let's see. Okay, we have casting news as well for the Doom Patrol show. Not Titans, not Teen Titans, but for some reason they've decided to put Cyborg on Doom Patrol. And this actor, Jovian Wade, again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Jovian Wade has been cast as Cyborg in the upcoming Doom Patrol show. And this also had some minor controversy because some were suggesting that Ray Fisher would be stepping down from the role of Cyborg in order to accommodate this new casting. Because, quite honestly, DC, or more accurately, Warner Brothers, is very strange in their allowances of what characters can be on television and in the movies at the same time. For example, you can have The Flash in the movies and on television. You apparently can have Supergirl in the movies and on television, since they announced there's going to be a Supergirl movie. But then again, for the longest time, you couldn't have Superman on television and in the movies. Eventually that changed. But that kind of is, there's wiggle room with that because they just gave the mildest of cameos on Supergirl to Superman. And when they did Superman Returns, of course, Smallville didn't really have Superman. It was all about Clark Kent. So there's kind of like wiggle room there. Also, they are dead set against putting a version of Batman on television, forbidding him from being in the Arrowverse for some reason, even though Batwoman is going to get her own show, and even though Gotham is on television. Again, it's a series that does not involve Caped Crusader. So Ray Fisher took to Twitter, and again, I don't have the words right here in front of me because, well, them's the breaks. But he did say that he is not stepping down from the role of Cyborg. There are still plans for Cyborg to be used at some point, although I think it's pretty obvious, I hate to say, that Cyborg is not getting his own solo movie. It was, I believe, announced for 2020 way back in, I don't know, what was it, 2010, when these movies were first starting to be laid out. But that has not been the case. We have heard nothing about it since then. Then when he took the role in Justice League, there was the obvious implication that he would return in Justice League Part 2, which would be the Legion of Doom. That seems to have gone by the wayside because Justice League was not a resounding success. And so that kind of leaves Ray Fisher in the lurch as to what to do with Cyborg. What's his character going to do in the future of the DCEU? Of course, there was rumors that he would appear in a Flash solo movie, which is looking unlikely, although there's no confirmation about that because they are pretty much committing to a Flash shooting date. I believe we talked about this last time. Early, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Early in 2019, I believe, is when shooting starts on the Flash for a 2020 release. But again, no one knows. By the time a Cyborg movie is made, probably Doom Patrol will be done. But I don't know what Doom Patrol will be about. We talked about it a couple of times in the past. It's a comic, apparently, that I'm not really aware of. But, it's very confusing why they would put Cyborg in the show instead of in Titans, or maybe even, they could have utilized him more in different areas. I mean, they should be trying to focus on getting a Justice League 2 movie out. I would like to see him in Arrowverse. He doesn't seem to be too difficult a character to realize. I mean, they're using a lot of CG for the character in the movies in Justice League, but you could arguably just do a very basic version of Cyborg with just like a illuminated chest piece or something. It's really not something that's probably going to cost you $500,000 to realize. But let me know what you think in the comments below about Cyborg and Doom Patrol. All right, as we carry on here, this is more grist for the mill, as they say. This is rumor mill garbage, but we is going to talk about it anyway. Of course, the rumor that just came out today is that Warner Brothers is looking, if this is, again, a rumor, I'm going to stress that. According to an insider, the studio is looking for an actress to play a world-weary Black Canary who has the ability to sing. They are apparently looking for a biracial actress. This may have been the role Lady Gaga was approached for, but ultimately passed on, and Warner Brothers wants to go in a different direction. So the rumor has it that Lady Gaga was asked to play apparently either Huntress or Black Canary. She passed on it and didn't want to take the part. And now the rumor is they want a biracial Black Canary. Because, having a cast of lead actors comprised of Latinos, Asians, Italians, and having two blonde women, well, of course, pure Hollywood reasoning means that you'd have to get rid of one of the blondes. And since Margot Robbie is, of course, already cast as Harley Quinn, and she's basically producing this film, if I understand it correctly, they're going to try to make a Black Canary, which is very, I mean, isn't that kind of overkill when you have almost all the Black characters named Black something, and the one Black, at least the one DC character that's named Black something that is not racially Black, you're going to try to turn that into a Black actress. This is ridiculous. Once again, all for the sake of almighty diversity. I mean, again, there isn't anybody complaining about diversity when it is naturalized. As we have just stated, we're going to have Renee Montoya, a Latino actress. We are going to have Cassandra Cain, which will require an Asian actress. The Huntress has always traditionally been Italian, which, again, they're saying that it could be Alexandria Daddario, but upon further inspection, they say that she is at least part Italian. So for the diehard purists, which I'm sure, in this day and age, you're not supposed to be that concerned, but they wouldn't even have a problem with that because she's legitimately Italian. So that leaves us with Black Canary, who is, of course, a blue-eyed, blonde waif. And we still have to have probably a Black actress in a prominent role because that's the only thing that's missing. And, of course, rather than just have a, another ancillary character be Black, like some police officer or something that... change Canary because we can't have that. Don't you understand me? We can't have that. But again, see, this is what I don't understand. This is the thing that I honestly don't understand about these diversity moves. Why do we really need to worry about the diversity in these movies? Shouldn't the story alone be enough to captivate us? That is my problem all along. Now, there's nothing wrong with diversity because if you have diverse characters like in this movie, that's a natural. You want to do a movie with Renee Montoya, you're going to have a Latino actress in the movie. And of course, same thing, Cassandra Cain. You're going to have an Asian actress. But that is like not enough. Why is that not enough? Because every single race has to be represented in one movie. I don't get that. I don't understand why that is such a big issue, because when you consider the Black Panther, that movie was phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal is selling it short. I mean, that was a blockbuster among blockbusters. And the cast is 98% Black. There are background characters that may be Asian and Latino and stuff that, freeze frame it and maybe you could see. But I mean, the main characters are predominantly Black. And I don't think anybody in the audience, myself especially, I mean, I could speak for myself, nobody was thinking, oh, I really need to see one of these main actors be Latino. I really need to see one of these main actors be white. I need to see one of these main actors be Asian. Nobody's thinking that, because you're supposed to be telling a good story first and foremost. Didn't want to really get on a rant with the subject, but if you've listened to any of my videos, if you've read any of my thoughts on Twitter, the bane of my existence, the one thing that I hate the most is this diversity crap where they're changing the races of characters, forcing diversity in just for the sake of it to prove how woke they are. I wasn't going to talk about this either because I think there is it's another rumor, but it's of dubious origin that perhaps Idris Elba will be playing James Bond in the next incarnation of James Bond whenever Daniel Craig decides to leave the role, which he's threatened to do several times. And as I said, this is kind of a dubious background. But supposedly they're looking at Idris Elba. And again, of course, this is not a surprise, really. They've already changed Moneypenny. She's Black now. So why not just go the whole 9 yards and make Bond Black and Q Black and whatever else? Why not, right? I mean, what's the difference? I mean, when you're a white character, a white fictional character, your ethnicity, for some reason, doesn't inform your character. Only if you're Black, Asian, Latino, whatever. But for some reason, when you are white, that does not inform the character. That's just a generic default mode that you can go into your... I'm not much of a gamer. I don't know exactly the terminology, but you can go into the store and change your character around and give them an afro and whatever. So again, I'm not a really big Bond guy, so this is like not something that I'm going to beat into the ground because I think it's a rumor anyway. I don't think it's going to happen. But, this diversity hires are just getting completely out of control. It's like Oprah, you're getting race changed and you're getting race changed and you're getting race and gender changed. Why can't we have fidelity to the characters as they were originally created? Why can't we make them look like they looked in the comics? Why can't we have these characters look like we've always associated them with looking? Why do we have to prove how woke we are? Why is it always only on one side of the fence? As somebody said to me on Twitter today, they would never allow Storm to be race changed. And the excuse is always, well, you have so few Black characters, Black female characters. Why would you want to take a character like Storm and race change them? But the point is, Storm was created in a very specific manner. She was created to be an African woman, a Black woman. And to change that is to spit in the face of the creator, of the fans. It's very, as I've said many times, the visual aspect is 50% of the character. I've said this many times. The visual aspect is 50% of the character. And if you want to say that the look of the character doesn't matter. It can be played by anyone. You are just being disingenuous. You are being untrue to yourself. Because there is no way that you can get the same feeling of that's the usual de facto uh, um, example is Jimmy Olsen. You can't look at Makad Brooks and say, that's Jimmy Olsen. I recognize him. That's the Jimmy Olsen I always read. I mean, they tried to do a little something different with him, so it's not just purely a race change, but it would be the same thing here. If you're going to stick a blonde wig on a black actress, is that what they intend on doing? And try to pass her off as Black Canary, that's not Black Canary. Because Black Canary is not black. It's the same thing with Starfire they're trying to do when you have the SJWs and up in arms and that people have deigned to be offended that she doesn't have orange skin as the comic does. It's really disheartening stuff. And of course, they tried. This was actually going to be a topic I was going to cover, but again, I am so tired of having to cover these race changes. It's just, it's repulsive to me. There was the article about the Buffy reboot where the Mary Sue, which is of course a very feminist leaning, it's really all feminist propaganda, and the woman columnist there was outraged basically that they would try to replace Buffy, replace Sarah Michelle Gellar with a black actress. And no, Buffy is Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Sarah Michelle Gellar is white, and we can't do that and this and that. And it's always coming down to, well, that's my character. So you can't change that character because that's the way I identify with that character. That's the way I want my character to look because I like that character. No, it's got to be across the board, 100% fidelity. You can't just willy-nilly decide what you want to race change and what you don't want to race change. And again, like I said, it's the height of racism. I did a whole video on this that you can find, I'm sure, my soapbox, The Folly of Race-Changing Characters. So look it up if you want to hear some more. But it's racism pure and simple to say that a white character's background, history, ethnicity, looks doesn't inform the character. But if you're black or Asian or Latino or Slovakian or whatever, that informs the character. Being white is just as much a character trait as being black and Asian and Latino and Slovakian and whatever. So again, sorry for the rant, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? As I always say, try to be civil if we're going to talk about this, because if you're going to just attacks, you're just and I don't like blocking people. I don't think I've ever blocked anybody on YouTube. I don't think I've ever blocked anybody on Twitter yet either. So, knock wood. All right, we got a couple more here. We're going to get to the big stories here now. The big stories. All right, Venom. Venom. We are Venom. Now, a lot of people are freaking out because the news has hit that Sony is pretty much intending Venom to be PG-13. And the fandom wept. The fandom wept except for Johnny Torch. Yes, as I said in my past, I think it was my last video, I don't like ultra violence. I don't like seeing bodies snapped in half and bloody body parts and stuff. That doesn't turn me on. I'm sorry to say. I'm squeamish, then so be it. But I don't need to see deformed violence in order to enjoy a movie. In fact, it takes me completely out of the movie. And again, I don't like a lot of swearing. I don't like, guttural humor. So, I mean, the fact that I couldn't see Deadpool, I tried to watch some of it. I didn't like it. And I was figuring that on a different level, not with the humor, but with the violence, I'm probably not going to see Venom. But since they are pretty much coming out and saying that they're going to make a PG-13, there is a chance that I might see it on the big screen, as I didn't see Logan on the big screen. I don't like to see violence on the big screen. Now, according to one of these sources I have here, it says, Sony is willing to give a future release an R rating, but the studio is holding back for now, and Venom will indeed be PG-13. Basically, they want the movie to push the boundaries of that rating without crossing over into Logan territory. While Spider-Man currently resides in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Sony still owns the character, and they want the Wall Crawler and Venom to cross paths one day. As a result, they won't make an R-rated Venom because it closes the door on them meeting. So that's pretty much the reason. And it makes sense, really. It makes sense. If you want Venom to fight Spider-Man one day, Spider-Man is never going to have an R-rated film. I hate to break the news to you geeks out there that are still hoping for a Spider-Man rated R film. Spider-Man is not a rated R character. I mean, arguably Venom, you can get away with it. Wolverine, you can get away with it. You know, that it fits in that world. But Spider-Man does not fit in an R-rated world. Spider-Man is more youth-oriented. So this does make sense in that respect. I don't see how you cross him over with Spider-Man, though, when he doesn't have anything to do with the Spider-Man origin. You have to kind of have that as the basis of the Venom origin. But then again, when you look at the MCU Spider-Man, there's no real basis for his origin either. He was bitten by the spider, and we don't really know what happened. He decided to be a superhero, and you have to imagine in the dark recesses of your mind, Uncle Ben getting shot for the 100th time. But they ain't going to show it to you, and they ain't going to mention his name. And Spider-Man just became Spider-Man. So with no tangible origin for Spider-Man in the MCU, I don't really see a problem with Venom not having ties to Spider-Man and his origin if they should ever cross over. It is what it is. It is what it is. But again, I'm the only one maybe that is happy to see they're going to make Venom PG-13. If you are happy about it, please let me know. If you're not happy about it, you can let me know that too. But what do you think about this? Why do we need Venom to really physically bite somebody in half? I mean, do we need to see it? I mean, we can imply it. We can imply it without having to see it. And to me, that's just as good. I mean, you know, to be totally honest with you, when you think about all the great Hollywood classics up to the mid to late 60s, they were all generally G-rated. And they encompassed a wide range of stories, a wide range of situations, some more mature than others. But the fact that they all reined it in so that it wouldn't be morally repugnant to see, there's nothing wrong with that. We become so desensitized as a society. We don't react harshly anymore. Violence and blood and nudity and brutality against women, against children. I mean, I don't think anybody is sensitive to any of these things anymore because it's been going on since the 70s. Pushing the envelope, you can keep pushing it, but after a point, you're not pushing the envelope anymore. You're going past it. You're going past the envelope, and you're not even pushing it anymore. You've made, you know, a sensitive subject desensitized to the world at large. And in some cases, that might be all right, to be a little more frank in certain areas. You know, I know there was a lot of restriction, especially with the Hays Code back in the, I believe it came out in the mid to the late 30s. The Hays Code, you know, changed everything. And it's the same thing with like the Comics Code Authority back in the 50s and 60s when it was instituted. It was very strict. You couldn't do anything that was seen to be somewhat provocative. And that's not what I'm talking about. I don't believe in having things be completely puritanical, but I think there is something to using your imagination. If somebody's going to bite somebody's head off, just tell me that he's going to bite his head off. You don't have to show me the head being swallowed and stuff. You know, if you want to have a romantic scene, you can suggest what happened. You don't have to have showed the whole thing. And so I think that's something that is a problem with society. And again, I've gotten on my soapbox, which was just supposed to be a very simple video today. It was going to take 45 minutes. I've gotten on my soapbox twice already. All right, but let me know what you think about the PG-13 Venom. And staying with the Sony subject, we're going to talk a little more about Sony's plans. Sony 100 characters in the Spidey-verse, and Spidey ain't one. So this is, oh, she's cute. This is the Black Canary. This is Black Canary, excuse me. Black Cat. See, I had two cosplayers in the show today. So one of them was Black Canary, one of them was Black Cat. Okay. The current state of affairs for the Sony spidey-verse, which means they have 900 characters they can call upon that are still co-owned by them, and they can make movies about freely, but they can't use Spider-Man, at least not until something else is worked out with Marvel, where either this universe will start to encroach in the MCU or Spidey is let back into the Sony verse. One or both may happen. I don't think these characters will come into the Marvel universe, but it's very confusing because how does Marvel dictate to them what they want to use? Like, for instance, we've got the Vulture, we've got the Scorpion, we've got the Shocker. Those are free to be used, but I guess Marvel doesn't care if they use Venom, Black Cat, and so forth, that they have no intention on using them in the MCU, at least in the foreseeable future. Because why would they want to fold these characters in to the MCU having no creative control over them? I don't know. But apparently, according to the stories that are coming out, 900 characters. Now, this is all, this is counting like Aunt May, and, they could legitimately do the Aunt May movie, Sony. And this has been rumored that they were going to do an Aunt May movie. But, it's like, how far are they going to go trying to squeeze films out of the Spideyverse? I mean, are we going to have, Gwen Stacy, the Picnic Years? I mean, I don't know. What are they going to do? Randy Robertson applying for college? I don't know. What are they going to do with all these characters? Because that's basically what they mean. They're going to have the young Aunt May movie where she meets Uncle Ben. I don't know. Maybe the film can end with Ben getting shot. We could finally have that as an origin. I don't know. I don't know what the plan is with these 900 characters, but they have plenty of Spidey villains that they're trying to spin into solo films. As we had already mentioned, Venom is already in the works. Kraven the Hunter, we talked about last week, is also in the works. I don't know what they're planning to do with that. That seems like a hard one to make It's hard to make Kraven a solo film unless you're going to completely ignore the Spider-Man connections. I mean, what is he going to be hunting? Is he going to just be a big game hunter? Are we going to do like Predator or something? I mean, that's the only thing I could think of. They just stick him up against some other big bad, and you're supposed to cheer for Kraven, I guess. I don't know how that works. Maybe they'll use the Lizard again, and they could do that. I just hope not. I don't want to see Kraven alone. They are going to make a Morbius movie with Jared Leto, which, besides Venom, I think Morbius is the only other villain that you could probably do a solo film on, because he's basically a reluctant vampire and, sort of embraces his vampirism at the end of the story. I can see that working as a solo standalone film, though I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend you try to make a Morbius movie without Spider-Man, but c'est la vie. All right, there is also some word on the Silver and Black film. Do you remember this? Silver and Black was supposed to be the Raiders. No, not the Raiders story. This was supposed to be Silver Sable and Black Cat's team-up movie. The story has been scrapped. The studio says, we believe Black Cat is enough of her own character with a great backstory and a canon of material to draw from to justify her own film. Silver Sable, on the other hand, Sony is reportedly still mulling over pairing her up with Black Cat. So I imagine they're going to do a Black Cat solo story first, then they're going to maybe pair her up with Silver Sable, and they're going to try to make her sort of, I think what the intention is to make Black Cat the Harley Quinn of the Spideyverse. I mean, she's not going to necessarily be as humorous and ditzy or whatever, but they're not going to, just make her a sidekick. They're going to try to, I think, branch her out into her own brand, so to speak. And that's honestly pretty smart. I think if you have any character besides Spider-Man in the Spideyverse that'll work on their own as a sort of a tentpole character, it would be Black Cat, because she's not a dedicated villain. She's just a cat burglar. And she very much has her origins in Catwoman. Basically the cat burglar with a heart of gold, and she's sort of out for herself, but she's a sucker for the hard luck cases. And you also have the fact, like I said, you can integrate her in different movies as a semi-protagonist. Venom is a little bit more difficult to sort of farm out because he's more of a wild card. You need someone with a lot more, basis in, being more rooted in not being as impractical, I guess is the word I'm looking for. But it's impractical to expect Venom to stay on the straight and narrow. Black Cat might be able to accomplish that a little more. So again, what do you think about this? Do you think that they could do a universe that is interconnected, that would have Black Cat, fraternizing with Venom, fraternizing with Silver Sable, crossing over with Kraven, moving in on Morbius? Because that was also in the Spidey animated series. If you remember the '90s show, Michael Morbius was in love with Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat. So that could be another thing. They might cross over Morbius with Black Cat. I have a feeling that's what they're going to do. They're going to make Black Cat their tentpole character in this universe, and they're going to try to make Venom sort of their surrogate Spider-Man. But I don't know. Another thing that concerns me is if they do a Black Cat movie, what is the age of the Black Cat going to be? Because if you're saying you want to cross over Venom with Spider-Man, of course, Eddie Brock, Tom Hardy is significantly older than Tom Holland, but you could still kind of get away with it because, he was a grown man at the time, Spider-Man, when he fought Eddie/Venom. But it's going to look even worse, though, if you're going to have sort of a 30-year-old Black Cat, and then you try to cross her over with, the perpetually young-looking Tom Holland, who is what in reality he's in his 20s, right? It's like 22, something like that. But they're going to have to consider making an age-appropriate Black Cat if they want to do crossovers like they're supposedly suggesting. And also, the news report says that Sony is trying to be, faithful to the comics. And yes, the Venom costume, they're trying very hard to make it look authentic. So apparently they're going to try to do the same for Black Cat and Kraven. We'll see. We'll see if any of these ever get off the ground. All right, in our final story today, we've got our final news of the day. This is a very strange story. Everybody was waiting for this Star Trek IV movie to come out. And for some reason, these Star Trek movies take forever and a day. I mean, Chris Pine has made, well, he's in the process of making another Wonder Woman movie. He's made 2 Wonder Woman movies by the time this Star Trek IV will come out. Chris Hemsworth has made, well, it's not fair because he wasn't in the last 2 Star Trek movies, but he's made like 3 Thor films since he was in Star Trek. I mean, there's no need for this long wait in between films, but it looks like there's trouble in paradise here. The Paradise Syndrome has hit. I'm going to see how many Star Trek puns I can make during this whole broadcast. The Hollywood Reporter has the scoop saying the actors who play James and George Kirk, Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth, respectively, insist they have deals in place and the studios are reneging on them, forcing them to take pay cuts as they try to budget a movie that is following a mediocre performer. So, for those of you who don't speak Hollywood jargon, that means Star Trek Beyond didn't make a lot of money. It wasn't a box office disaster, but then again, it didn't return huge profits that, would justify a huge paycheck to pretty much all involved. But of course, the stars of the show, they want them to take a slightly reduced salary. Deals with actors like Zoe Saldana and Zachary Quinto are expected to close, and the film is still a priority development and isn't being put on hold. Now, the headline here is, of course, I didn't read the headline, but Pine and Hemsworth reportedly stop contract negotiations for Star Trek 4. So what this means is they're saying a lot of outlets are reporting Pine and Hemsworth are walking away from Star Trek 4. That's not exactly what this is. Before anybody panics, let's take a step back and take a deep breath. What this means is that they're not satisfied with their contracts. They think they should be paid more because apparently, especially Pine, he's had a contract in place. We heard this. You could probably find it in the Torch News Roundup somewhere, but I remember reporting on the fact that Quinto and Pine were already signed for, I forget, I think it was multiple movies. It might be 3, might be 2. I can't remember how many movies they were signed for, but they are signed already for multiple movies. And so what apparently is happening is that signing on the dotted line, Pine expected whatever they promised him at that time, 2 years ago or whatever it was. Now the Paramount bigwigs are coming in and saying, look, we didn't make a whole lot of money on Beyond, which I thought was a good movie, by the way. I liked that one a lot. I kind of like Into Darkness a little bit more because it has that drama, the building drama. But to be honest with you, I think Star Trek Beyond felt the most like classic Trek. I felt like it was the closest in keeping with the television show, you know, with the way the characters behaved. I mean, they still had the Spock and Uhura love relationship, which I don't like. But they did have a little bit more of a classic Trek feeling. Now, apparently, the story that they were going to use for this Star Trek 4 was going to be George Kirk, Kirk's father, who died the day he was born in Star Trek, the original film. And some kind of time travel abnormality would send the young George Kirk, or send the Enterprise to the young George Kirk, and they would team up at some point here in the film. Now, this made a lot of sense because, for one thing, if you watch those Star Trek, the Kelvin-verse films, they are very rooted in the fact that George Kirk's sacrifice is what impressed upon James Kirk to take his place as a starship captain. They don't fail to mention this many times during the series. And of course, the more important reason to the studio, of course, is that Chris Hemsworth is a bankable commodity, doing very well in the Thor movies and the Avengers movies. He's a star in his own right. Of course, he really hasn't done anything beyond Thor that was wildly successful beyond, of course, his role as George Kirk, so it makes sense to bring him back. All right, let's see, what else do I have in this note? A 4th Trek film was announced in 2016. Pine, at least, had a tentative deal in place. However, since then, Paramount changed some of its executive leadership. Those execs are now saying, in light of the tepid performance of Star Trek Beyond, they need to dial back the budget on this film and would like to pay the actors less than they were originally promised or usually get. That's a tough position to take, considering both Pine and Hemsworth have continued to build their considerable stardom since 2016. So yeah, that's quite true. You know, they've only gotten bigger as stars with Hemsworth as Thor and Pine in the Wonder Woman films. What happens if neither Kirk, the father, or the son, who is reportedly a major player in the 4th film, come back? So far, there's no telling. The project could recast Kirk and his father, or perhaps the two sides could come back to the table, The Hollywood Reporter said. So again, in this case, and it says the film doesn't have a release date. As I said, this is basically just a tactical ploy. They really are not walking away from this film. They're basically testing the waters. They're stepping back and saying, okay, look, we're not giving any more quarter. The actors are saying, you tell us if you're ready to negotiate, and then we'll come back to the table. That's all they're doing, really, because I seriously doubt they can do the movie without Pine. I don't really see how you recast this role. Now, of course, they are going to have to either recast or replace Anton, who played Chekhov. I can't remember his last name, but he passed away tragically a couple of years ago. So there's that. So you could be looking at maybe some recasting. Would it be widespread? Would they be willing to recast both Kirks as well as Chekhov? I don't know. From what I understand, they were going to replace Chekhov, but not recast him. I think they were going to use. They were possibly going to use that three-armed guy from the animated series, but I don't know if that was really feasible or not. Which I thought would be a fine thing to do if you don't want to recast Chekhov, because it's kind of the way it is these days. It's like you don't want to recast a dead actor. They did the same thing with like Heath Ledger and stuff. It's like the character's bigger than the actor. I mean, since you've already replaced him, the original Chekhov is Walter Koenig. Anyway, what do you feel about this? Do you think this is just much ado about nothing, and that, of course, Pine will come back to the table? Hemsworth will probably come back to the table, and the studio will probably wave a few more bucks at them and say, okay. I was watching a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff about the Trek films. I'm actually watching the Trek films now. I'm in the middle of, I got Star Trek 5 coming up next tonight. But I actually don't hate Star Trek 5. But when I'm done watching the Star Trek movies, I'll give some thoughts on them and do a ranking video that nobody will watch. But one of the things they always come back to is that the Star Trek movies were made relatively cheaply. They spent a lot of money on the motion picture, and it's one of those things where it did well because everybody wanted to see the original cast. It's sort of like the reason why the sequel trilogy Star Wars movies do well is because everybody wants to see Hamill, Ford, and Fisher up on the screen, but the results later on, the film gets derided for being not that great. And it was the same case there. But from Star Trek 2 on, they really didn't pour a lot of money into the Star Trek movie budgets. And we still got some really great movies. I mean, I think Star Trek's 2, 3, 4, 6, especially, those 4 movies were particularly good. The budget shows a little bit more on 5. You could tell that they had a hard time with that film. And I feel bad for William Shatner because, he tried his best. It's not like it's really on him. But difficulties emerged in that film, and it became a problem. But if you watch 2, 3, 4, and 6, I mean, the quality of those films is amazing, and it's not really on a huge budget. They gave them considerably less money on Star Trek 2 because of what happened with the motion picture, and that is arguably, I don't think it's even arguable. It's not arguable. That's the best Star Trek movie ever made, and that was made because what they did was they redressed sets. They used the same bridge for the Enterprise as the same bridge for the Reliant. They did a lot of those things. They built simple sets that didn't really need a lot of work. And then when it came to Star Trek 4, instead of taking the Enterprise to the Revolutionary War or something where there needed to be a lot of special effects and costuming and stuff, they took them to 20th century Earth, the 80s, which is when the film was made. So again, I don't really have a concern. I think what will happen is they'll just slash the budget in other places. They'll probably still need a big budget for this day and age of CGI and so forth, but you really don't need a huge budget on a Star Trek film. The Star Trek television show was made with basically $1.60. And if you can make a television show with that budget, what can you do in a movie? You can do just as well. All right, so yeah, I don't think this is gonna be a major issue, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Will they make the movie without Pine and Hemsworth if need be? Do you think they should make the film without Pine and Hemsworth? Like I said, I don't think any character is beyond being replaced, but I don't know. In this case, I think it's worth it for them to just offer Pine something else and get him back on board. I don't think this reboot series will be helped by losing him, particularly as he's climbing the ladder of success. So I would make every attempt to bring him back. Again, the same with Hemsworth, although I suppose you could just come up with a different script and not use the one with George Kirk if you can't get Hemsworth back. But I think at this point, since it's been like 5 years since this film has been gestating or something, I think they really should get a move on and try to get something going. Of course, the other script they supposedly are working with is the Quentin Tarantino one, which I think is pretty much still under wraps. I don't think anybody knows what's going on with that one or what it's about. I think it has something to do with time travel as well, which is why a lot of people thought this might be a merging of Tarantino script and this script. But no, I think those are two separate movies. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. I think they should just offer something else to Pine and Hemsworth, cut the budget elsewhere, and see what you can do. Star Trek is coming back. Star Trek is popular, and it'll always be popular, but especially when you've got Picard coming back on the small screen. You've got, they're doing a eugenics war miniseries about Khan. You got to have, I'm a firm believer, you've got to have the original Trek represented some way. You've got to have Kirk, Spock, and McCoy continue on. It would be sad not to otherwise, and not have the legacy that was established by Shatner and Nimoy and Kelly and et al. Not have them represented because they started it all. I was just listening, as a matter of fact, I was listening back to back to the audiobooks of I Am Not Spock and I Am Spock. Very interesting. I would like to go back and do one of the first videos I wanted to do that I started writing notes for that I didn't finish was a history of Star Trek. The thing is, though, is I wasn't going to take it back to the original series. I was going to go from Phase 2 era on to the end of Star Trek 6 and just encapsulate those years. Because I think everybody knows about the TV show, and I think everybody knows pretty much the after the original cast. I mean, everybody focuses on Next Generation and that era of Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and stuff. But I kind of wanted to do a retrospective that focused on the original series, the later years. And I could always go back and just cover the original series after if I wanted. But I still got some aspirations towards that. Hopefully someday getting that written out and, getting the video made. Okay, so thank you once again for joining me for another Johnny Torch Live broadcast, number 107 this week. Torch News Roundup, number 102. And check out the link in the description below to find the Adventures of Bullets Bourbon comics. You can find all the information there, character bios. You can find the free preview that is up there that'll show you a couple of pages of the most recent book, Street of Dreams, where Bullets Bourbon takes on his two main arch nemesis. Is that another Star Trek pun? Pencil Neck and Carrot Top, his two main arch rivals who are making things difficult for him right now, and his potential love affair with the Hollywood starlet Desiree Miller. That's all in The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon Private Eye. You can check it out in the link in the description. Up to date with all the stuff that I'm up to. All the ongoings of the Bullets Bourbon universe are also posted there, of course, and my other musings that will hopefully someday be made into videos if I have the time. We will see you again most definitely Wednesday. My schedule permits for Wednesday and Saturday videos. Sometimes I will give you the rare Monday video. I like to do a Cloak and Dagger review because I've been saying I want to do a quickie, just like a 20-minute video to wrap up that series because I watched it all and my thoughts on it. And the further away I get from the last episode, the least likely I'm going to be doing it. But I'm going to see if I can get that out maybe on Monday. We'll see. But in any case, until next we meet, this is Johnny Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.